I'm Kelly Flanagan. I am the vice chair of the EDCC this year and co-chair of the conference. I hope you're enjoying yourselves and learning a lot, I hope. I'm really excited about our next session. It's something I saw a couple years ago, and I just kept thinking, I got to figure out how to bring this to Colorado and bring this to the EDCC. So if you're brave enough to come on this trip with me and the bravest to actually go ahead and speak, and you're a swipe speaker, I hope you're ready, I hope you're mic'd, and I hope you're sitting over here so you can come quickly. So if you're not, please join my friends at this table over here. So I heard an acronym, and I like acronyms, and this was at one point in my career, someone said, Kelly, I think you need to swipe some of these ideas. And I kept thinking, God, I don't know, is that ethical? Is that wrong? Should I feel bad about that? And I asked a little bit more, what is swipe? And he said, it's really okay. It's stealing with integrity, pride, and enthusiasm. And so now that seemed like a really good idea. And so I've seen Ignite sessions. That's sort of what it's going to be like today. You're quick. So I hope that you can follow quick. There's a timer, so I'll be crazy about it. And then I'll give you a couple minutes in between to introduce our next speaker. So Ryan, you're so brave. Thank you so much for doing this. He's the Director of Economic Development for the City of Arvada, and he's going to speak quick. These are rapid-fire 5-minute sessions. We're going to automatically advance your slides, so you keep up. And please welcome Ryan Stachelski from the City of Arvada.
Thanks. Great. And I'm just waiting for the first slide, so Okay, so to get started, what I'm going to talk about today is strategic planning with performance measures, and the focus is on the performance. This is not activities, these are results. So we're not talking about just because I did this one time that is it, is what was the goal. Our goal is led by a team, and this is our team, and the reason why I know that they've bought into this process is because this picture was taken at 6:30 in the morning, and they all have smiles on their face. What happens when you have a great team that has performance measures is it leads to great results. One of our great results is we are the first community in Colorado to achieve the accredited economic development organizations, and I challenge you guys to be one of the next. So this starts with strategic planning, and I'm sure everybody has a strategic plan, and there are lots of ways to go over how you create a strategic plan. Where we started our strategic plan, we looked at the issues, and what issues were we trying to challenge ourselves to solve. There are positive issues, there are negative issues, but there are things that we're trying to do. And when we look at the issues, we say, okay, we've identified them. Now we want to get to the results. And we take those issues and we say, these are the results and the outcomes that we're trying to achieve from the various issues that we've identified through our stakeholders and our cohorts. So we have our issues, we have our results. Now what do we do about it? We provide services. Services are the things that we do each and every day in order to achieve our results. When you look at what our services are, we've listed hundreds of them, or I should say 100 or so. On the next slide, on this slide, it shows you an example of just maybe a couple of dozen of those. One example is welcome cards and welcome packets. We deliver a welcome card and a welcome packet to every new business in the city of Arvada. Why do we do that? So that we can build relationships. That helps us achieve our goals. Goals are the last tool in the tool bag in order to actually start developing the performance measures. And so that's where we're trying to get to with all of this prep work. So when we develop our performance measures, we keep a couple things in mind. Number one is we try to be very specific. Being specific allows us to know exactly what we're trying to achieve. The next thing that we try to do is what everybody is aware of is keep it simple, right? Keep it simple, stupid. So this is my slide for everybody to remember. Keep it simple. These performance measures aren't supposed to be complicated things that are convoluted and that are trying to get you to go to different places. So when you're developing a performance measure, what do you want to do? There's 3 things to keep in mind. It needs to be time-bound. It needs to be a single goal, and you need to know if you did it well by measuring how much. An example that we use for it is sales tax. So By 2015, new retail businesses will bring $250,000 in new sales tax to the city of Arvada. It's time-bound. It's singular. It's new retail businesses, sales tax revenue. How much? $250,000. That's a very clear goal that we've all agreed to. Finding the data. Where are you going to find this data? It's not supposed to be complicated. Performance measures isn't about trying to find the most innocuous piece of data. It needs to be easy to find, it needs to be consistent, it needs to be reliable. I'm trying to achieve a goal. I'm not trying to spend all my time finding data. Sales tax is an easy thing to find. So, after we get past the data, then we get to the point of doing the work. And this is where you innovate. None of the steps so far tells you how to do it. It just gives you a goal and it says, this is our expectation. Go out and find it. And with that in mind, it allows you to achieve greater things. But as you're innovating, you're realizing that you're always revisiting the goal. Is it the right goal? You're learning along the process. So you always have to take a step back and say, is $250,000 the right goal? And so why do you do any and all of this? It's to tell your story. It's so that you can control your narrative. So when you have boards that are going out there and saying, I know about economic development and this is what we should be doing. This process says we've identified the issues, we've done all the different things that we needed to do in order to say we've agreed upon these goals, and then those performance measures become the speech that your board members and your councils are saying. They're telling that story for you. You're controlling the narrative. So that's my last slide. Thanks.
So next we have new laws for crowdfunding with Karl Dakin, right? Am I saying it right? Who's the owner with Dakin Capital Services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity today to share with you my presentation, and it's starting now, so my 5 minutes are going. Next slide is about the Colorado Capital Congress. This is a new public benefit company in Colorado that is intended to help everybody gain better access to capital. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about crowdfunding. Access to capital is always a challenge for everybody, particularly in economic development. There are many, many sources of money that you can look to try to move an economic development program forward, but I assume every one of you is challenged every single day in getting more money. One of the things that people don't recognize is that the capital industry generally doesn't work that well. Over 95% of the time, you're getting turned down when you're looking for capital. This is the market. This is what we're dealt with as far as a deck of cards. So we're going to try to do a little bit better. Colorado Capital Congress has set itself up to be an aid to everybody in the room. We're here to help. And this is to open a conversation where maybe we can get together later and we can talk about how we can help you with your capital needs in your particular area. So crowdfunding is an old activity. I compare it to passing the offering plate at a church. We're just going to update it, upgrade it a little bit, and we're going to use automation in order to move it forward. But it has the potential to be majorly disruptive in the capital industry and become a force of positive for getting more capital into the hands where you want. There are three types of crowdfunding. There's gifting, there is product pre-sale, which is Indiegogo and Kickstarter, but the new one on the block is investment crowdfunding. This is the first major change in securities laws in over 80 years, and as a consequence, it's going to have a very different impact as we talk about who gets to participate. For investment crowdfunding to work, you have to have a sustainable business model. It can't work with charity, it can't work dependent upon if something happens in the future unless it's tied to something that has a revenue stream attached to generating products or services that generate cash. The big news on this is that there are over 230,000 accredited investors in Colorado. These are the people who have been given permission to invest generally without government regulation. With crowdfunding, we open this up to every adult in the state of Colorado, and there are 4.3 million people in Colorado who meet this definition. Obviously, a bigger, broader group of potential investors to work with you on a particular type of campaign, and crowdfunding now will enable that. So crowdfunding will not work for everything. It's going to work best in certain types of consumer products and customers' products and services that can work with you, and planning is required along the way. And I have more information for anybody who's interested in learning more about crowdfunding. The last slide will give you some contact information. I'm happy to share with you digitally or by phone or by meeting to help you learn more about it. Before you crowdfund, you need a crowd. 42% of Kickstarter campaigns fail because they started it without a group of people who are already interested in what they're going to try to achieve. So you want to build your crowd, then fund from the crowd in order to get there. Crowds can be anybody. They can be customers, employees, vendors, suppliers. It changes who you talk to because there's all kinds of stakeholders who care about the success of what you're trying to do. You're not limited to a simple set of people who happen to have a lot of money in their pocket who are accredited investors. Investment crowdfunding can be equity, debt, or revenue share. It's not just equity. You can do all kinds of things. It has amazing creativity and flexibility to fit your situation, time, money, size, shapes, and geographic location. But it works best when you incentivize the investment by offering products or services for the investor to come to the table. Engaging customers or constituents by giving them something at the time of investment can change the entire dynamic of how you raise money. So you can do it in a multi-stage environment. You can do it in a capital stack. These are all fun things for us who geek out over how to raise money. Happy to talk to you more about that. But as an example, I've recently started a private initiative economic development project called the Greenhouse District, where we're going to focus on making a center of excellence around greenhouses. We are going to look at crowdfunding as a way to bring money to specific projects that ordinarily are very difficult, if not impossible, to fund. Obviously, we're going to start because we're greenhouses. We're going to talk about local food production, but this could be the building of a greenhouse or a community greenhouse in your backyard. We're going to work on workforce housing and different types of low-income housing to make sure that we have workers trained on greenhouses to do the work we need to do. We can do business incubators. We can do parks and trails. We can do local community power grids, and we can do social enterprises. All of these things are ordinarily considered, as I say, difficult or impossible to fund. But if you engage your constituents, your community, your citizens, if you engage customers who will benefit from the success of your particular program or project, then they can all invest. And as investors, they have a reason to help you succeed, to tell your story, to spread that story, to make the whole thing work. So with that, this is the contact information I mentioned. If you would like to talk about crowdfunding anytime in the future, I'm welcome, as I said, to take a meeting, take a call, send me an email, and I'll be happy to chat with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, this is fun, right? Next, we have how to narrow the skill gap and get more workers. Rich Werner, President and CEO of Upstate Colorado Economic Development.
This is fun.
And at 5 minutes, you're out.
I know, or less. So, wow, you know, when we made the order for this, I didn't realize I would have two professional speakers in front of me. So it's a little intimidating. But what I want to talk about is a program that currently is being run in Weld County. And I think there's a video running there that we don't need to have on.
Here we go.
After I graduate high school.
After high school. After I graduate from high school.
And after I graduate high school.
And after high school.
I want to become an art teacher.
An award-winning author. Join the United States Marine Corps.
An EMT paramedic.
Either a physicist or a pathologist.
I'd like to go to the United States Air Force and then become a mechanic.
Early childhood education or psychology. My medical degree.
I want to be a nurse after high school.
College and go into business. Be a brain surgeon.
Agriculture, business.
Study law enforcement and criminal justice.
in Weld County, obviously a lot of you know what's going on up there. We certainly value our agricultural industries. We value our energy industry, which is having a tremendous impact up in Weld County. But more than anything, we value our people. And we look at what's going on, and we look at the skills gap that is occurring all across Colorado. And what we did is, do you have the clicker? Where's the clicker? There we go. I'll move this along. What we did is we worked with the legislature last year on Senate Bill 82. Now, many of you remember there were several workforce bills in the legislature, and we all said, of course, we're all just going to support workforce. It sounds good. But what this bill did is it gave counties the ability to offer a property tax credit for a stipend for our workforce. So what Weld County is now doing is offering a stipend to every single high school graduate who graduates from a high school in Weld County. That also includes GED recipients, and it also includes honorably discharged U.S. veterans. When we look at what's going on, I think we even heard it today, even at the state level, 50% of the workforce is retiring. We hear it in the trades. We hear it with welders. There's such a shortage of skilled workers. How do we help the next generation go forward? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this program and actually offer a 50% property tax credit on the county portion of real property tax. So how this is going to work, and I want you to focus on that first column. You pay your taxes. We all have to pay our taxes. You take $100, and you're going to get a $50 tax credit from the county. You're going to get $4.63 from the state. You're going to get $28 from the feds. And all of a sudden, that $100 donation is going to be out of pocket $17, just over $17. We're also working with the state. We might even make that number better. So what we're going to do, how are we going to fund it? The county has pledged to send out a notice, and the only reason this is here is because it's a typical bill that the assessor sends out. The county is actually going to promote this program by sending this out in every bill. They want you to donate to this program. 100% of the funds are going to go directly to the recipients. And what that means is right now Weld County is looking at offering a $3,000 stipend to every student who graduates from a Weld County high school. And that can be used for any higher education institution in the United States. It can also be used for any accredited job training program, any community college. If you want to go to Harvard, you can go to Harvard. If you want to go be a welder, be a welder. And that money will be eligible on all of those levels. If they go to a four-year institution, $12,000. So I reviewed the applicants. Like I said, if they maintain a 2.0, they'll get this money every year. The money is funded through this property tax credit. So companies, individuals, imagine this now. You can direct where your taxes go. It can go in the general fund, or you can check a box and it can go directly to a student. Any county in the state of Colorado can run this program. It may take a little longer for you than Weld County. Yes, Weld County has a tremendous amount of resources, and they are seeding this program, and it's going to be amazing. But any county can run this program, and if you need more information, let me know.
Thank you. Good job. All right, next we're going to learn about the role of foreign trade zones in international trade from Joe Kiely, Assistant Town Manager and Foreign Trade Zone Director for the Town of Limon.
Thank you. We got into foreign trade zones because Limon began to look at that as a tool that was important because of the reality that we're in a global economy and that all the components that come in for manufacturing need to take place. It's a designation through the Department of Commerce, Foreign Trade Zone. It's to encourage U.S. jobs and U.S. investment by companies coming into the U.S. When you begin to look at the big picture across the U.S., there were 179 FTZs and 311 active production operations. That is manufacturing or assembling. Value of the shipments over 798 million. 64% of the shipments received at foreign trade zones across the country involved domestic status merchandise. Operations that combine foreign and U.S. markets. Warehousing and distribution are part of it. 71% of zone activity is in those production activities, and you can see what some of the leading industries that are involved in that. When you begin more specifically to Colorado, we don't have a huge input of foreign trade zones. The numbers are relatively low, but it's still 251 to 500 employees on an annual basis. 2 zones that existed before Limon's, Colorado Springs that had no activity, and Denver that had 16 companies involved in warehousing and distribution, and 1 production company that spread across the state, being Vestas. From a local viewpoint, it creates primary jobs in the U.S. that could have been offshored. The facilities create local property taxes, and as we continue to say, the only way to raise state revenues is to create more primary jobs that earn more money. It's about foreign goods coming in, a component, maybe one part, maybe multiple parts of something that's being manufactured and assembled within Colorado. Here's how it works for the foreign company. They can import a product, they can store it, they can transport it to a foreign trade zone. When it enters into the U.S. market, they have to pay the duty at that point in time, instead of paying it when they first enter the U.S. They can reduce it by combining it with other things. They can still transport, enter the U.S. market, and they only pay the duty on the final product instead of all the sum of the components that were before. They can finally eliminate customs duty, import it, combine it with U.S. components, transport it from one trade zone to another, export it outside the U.S., and they pay no duty during that time period, but it's still U.S. people putting the jobs together. We did it under the alternative site framework. Instead of a single geographic area, any site in Colorado could be designated as part of a foreign trade zone. And one thing I tell elected officials, it doesn't affect land use regulations. The service area is limited to, by regulation and application, to 60 miles or 90 minutes from the Port of Denver. Our service area includes all of Adams, Arapahoe, major portions of Lincoln, Morgan, and Elbert counties. Within that service area, a usage-driven site may be a warehouse, a portion of a warehouse, or multiply close located warehouses run by one operator. A subzone is what could happen outside of that service area. It's a single-purpose site for one company when the operations can't be feasibly moved to or accommodated. Vestas operates under a subzone agreement with Denver. Magnet sites, larger property, more like an industrial park, 1 or more operators, 1 or more users. We do have a 2,000-acre limit at this point, and those count against it. We've designated 2 sites. One of them is at our airport, one of them is south of town. Very little, you have to get the activation from the Customs and Border Protection. The biggest thing is we have a guidebook that's available to help you understand the specifics of the process, how you apply, what are the various roles, the application forms. That's available on the Town of Limon's website under our Economic Development tab. And if you have more information you want to talk about, I'll be around the rest of the week, or give me a call. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. All right. Next, we're going to talk about rural towns and the social media craze. we have Chelsea Jones, the CEO and founder of Chelsea Jones Design.
So I have my own web and graphics design company, but I also consult for the town of Mancos, our rural town in southwest Colorado, on economic development. Why is that important and what matters about social media? How many of you are on all these social media things or even know what they are? Yeah, that's what I thought. How many of you even know what the hashtag is that we're talking about today? The hashtag 2015 EDCC? Yep, all about 6 of you that I see on Twitter right now. What does that mean? How are we utilizing that in our towns? What does that mean for rural economic development and economic development as a whole? There's a couple things. One, it's really underutilized. I guess I'm moving this forward. As far as what social media is, we need to focus on what branding is for our communities, and then with the brand, speak that out onto what it's saying on social media. The whole reason the hashtag got changed this morning, if anyone knew it got changed, is because if you actually hashtag EDCC 2015, you're going to find a lot of people speaking Arabic on Twitter, which is not obviously us. So that's why we changed it to hashtag 2015 EDCC. So why does that matter? What is important for that as an economic movement? Let me see if this moves forward. Is this moving forward instantly, or do I have to push it? Sorry. Okay. So the reason I really want to talk about branding as a town and a community is it's no longer what we tell the consumer it is, it's what the consumer tells each other it is. So really, it's important that we know we're in a different culture. We know we're on a very high, I'm in the millennial generation, so I'm big on technology. But the biggest thing about this is that we're on an emotional-driven society. You all probably see that. People get emotional about everything nowadays, from buying a cup of coffee to driving their car in traffic to anything like that. It's really important when it comes to social media because it's very emotional-driven. Oops. Okay. Examples of good branding. I wanted to kind of show you all probably know in your head what good branding is. We have Crazy Good Marketing here, which has done an amazing job of doing the EDCC brand. It's really important to have high quality, high resolution vector files. What's a vector file? Everyone knows that in a picture you take pixels. Some of you may already know this. It's a square is a pixel. Vector is a curve, so you can range it depending on what you're looking at. It's really important that communities have high resolution vector files of their logo because then they're speaking that they are in this generation, that they know how to transfer it into whatever medium that they're going to. Historic branding. I live in a small rural rustic town where we have a lot of history. We have a lot of over 100-year-old homes. It's an amazing historical heritage. How do we take that into this new generation with branding? We'll take that into light by having a designer or some sort of foundation put together something that speaks to what is your branding measures. And there's a lot of questions out there. If you Google it, what is branding, you'll get a whole bunch of questionnaires. I wanted to talk about updating brands, because a lot of people are like, well, I have a logo. How do we do with what we have? We want to make sure we do it. Well, look at Apple, for example. How many of you remember in the 70s when they had not even the Apple icon? Anyone? Yeah, no one does. But everyone remembers probably, I mean, even though this is a little before me, but I still remember and have seen the Apple icon with all the rainbows. And you can see the generations of how they moved. That's incredibly important when it comes to community development and economics as a town, as cities, as a state. How are we doing this in this next generation of looking at what our logo is representing going forward? How are we just updating it as a whole? Less is more. That's the biggest thing in this culture too when it comes to logo branding. Everyone knows the swoosh icon on Nike. Swoosh is very important because it's less is more. So don't think an overcomplicated logo design, but think simplifying them. And most logo updates are simplified. Viral images and how we can utilize that in economic development. This picture is actually from our town. That's a gentleman that lives in our town and walks through his cow across town and has his dog on the back. I know, it's really fascinating. We love it. That's part of our culture. I consulted for the town now for over a year, and I've really focused on them making sure, one, we updated their logo. We've updated the website. We've done all of that. But we also updated what they mean as a town as a motto. So we are where the West still lives and gateway to Mesa Verde. Why do I have this picture of our gentleman with the dog and the cow? Well, this picture actually went viral online. We got 60,000 hits on this picture for the town of Mancos. I mean, it kind of just blew up. Like everyone started sharing it, and it was all these different things. So 60,000 hits from a little town that has 1,400 people in it is pretty big and substantial. What does that mean for a town, and how does that impact us economically? We have had more visitors. We've been able to show, okay, we have this mass movement online, but how do we then make that hit our bottom line for our little mom and pop stores and towns? Well, I helped make this video, if they're going to play it and maybe mute it. But basically what this video is, if you have a minute on YouTube, search Town of Mancos, Mesa Verde country. It's 2 minutes long, but I put this whole video together basically saying who we are as a community. We are a town that, and it's emotionally driven. So it talks about our culture. It talks about the people in this town. It talks about a little bit to the businesses we have. We wanted to make it generic enough so we don't mention business names, but we say important things like farm-to-table restaurants, businesses, local coffee roasters, those kind of things that are important to us as a community. And we highlight it in a very emotionally driven way. And then we have a call to action at the end. Who knows what a call to action is? Okay, good, most of you. Call to actions are the buttons that you're seeing on all the new websites that say do this, buy this, sign up now. It's a call to action button that's specific to say come visit Mancos. That's like an important element. So then visitors can then come and automatically it can impact our bottom line. Last couple things. It's okay if it doesn't play too.
Yeah, I can't play.
Yeah, it's fine. Y'all can look it up on YouTube if you want. But I don't think my next slide's going. Well, the next slide was really to the point of just hitting this home, that two things are shared most on social media. One is funny. And everyone's seen probably the crazy cat scenarios on Facebook or those kind of things. So if you pick something in your community that's funny, that's going to get shared way more than other things. And then the second is educational. I love that we had the presentation on education earlier that was talking about how important it is to our communities and to invest in. But on the flip side, we need to start talking about our story. Ryan made a point of this from the mention with the city of Arvada earlier, how important it is to tell your story. And I love that because as a little small community, you tell your story well, that's what's going to be out there. And then that's why it's really important to kind of interact on social media.
Thank you. You have to be done. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, that feels bad, but 5 minutes is 5 minutes. There are rules to this game. So Sam, and I'm really sorry that you have to come after I decide that I'm going to be tough about rules. Sam Bailey, he's going to talk for 5 minutes about how to leverage OEDIT incentives and resources.
I want to talk to you about process and access because oftentimes it's all discretionary and you're moving a million miles a minute. You don't know how to handle it. So we talk about what are the state's incentives and resources? How do we communicate? What's our incentive process? What is it actually like inside the state? Government concierge, do funny words next to each other. And questions and feedback, we don't have enough time for. So you're going to take what I'm going to give to you. Our incentives, which are modest and performance-based, are as follows. We have a tax credit for job creation, cash incentive for job creation, job training program, our Colorado Enterprise Zone program, our government concierge, and the other resources throughout many of our divisions, one you'll hear about today. We do have a lot, but there's a process. Our tax credit, 8 years, usually funds between $7,500 and $15,000 per job. The requirements, interstate competitive factors, net new jobs, major factor, meets 100% of the county's average annual wage, and they must go through our preparation. I'll show you what that looks like. Our strategic fund, the cash incentive for the company without the tax liability, for net new jobs. Existing company may be expanding or company may be coming in. Very similar to job growth incentive tax credit. In fact, there'll be one combined application, government and efficiency. Colorado First Job Training. This program actually got new funding last year from the legislature. Now has a $4.5 million budget and an increased per employee amount for customized job training. It is one of the state's most flexible and accessible programs for training through a community college, consultant of companies choosing, or in-house. Our Enterprise Zone program, state program driven locally by many of the people here for existing businesses and businesses that are considering moving here. It's a great resource, one of the strongest that the state has to offer. I'm moving a little too fast, I'm sorry. Communication. Global Business Development Division within OEDIT is often the access point for business recruitment, retention, expansion, questions about our programs. Let our office educate you on our process, because there is a process with your clients. Let us be your advocate. We're not always leading, oftentimes we're supporting. So let's talk about that process. What does that look like? 3, 2, 1. Qualify your prospect. Is it recruitment? Is it retention? Is it expansion? What's the activity? Are there net new jobs? Are they looking elsewhere? Do they have training plans? Do they have capital investments that they're going to be making? What's the company's financial standing? Do they have VC? Are they well established? Communicate. Let your client know about what the state can do. Contact our office, which we now have Abby Pitzner is in the room representing our industry development team. We actually have a full staff now, which is great. Leverage us. We are your partners statewide. Provide us with a project scope. Tell us how best we can support you. Let us educate your client about the project, determine its eligibility, and provide a detailed timeline on how the company can best leverage the state resources. From our employment plan to our financial review, our application, our economic development commission, there is a process, and if we can make that transparent and easy, it moves things forward. In fact, here it is. Generally takes about 3 weeks. October 15th, we'll be approving 10 projects and almost $50 million of incentives for projects statewide. All went through this process. We make it easy, and we have some flexibility. We're not always stiff. For example, Sandy Head here from Montrose EDC went through this process with a company that we work with, Mayfly Outdoors. This was a locally led, state-supported project. We took a project through our process in conjunction with Sandy. We had incentives approved by the city on Monday, the county Tuesday, and the state on Thursday. That approval goes by our Economic Development Commission, which meets the second Thursday of every month. Back up 3 weeks, that conversation should have started a bare minimum 3 weeks before, if not earlier. But we can be flexible, and communication is key. It's all about a process. And that government concierge, when you think about these state agencies and you don't know who to call, start with us. What I'm telling you guys is steal a process from us about creating a formulaic but transparent process and be that advocate. Let us educate and support you. Today, we're overseeing a pipeline of 10,000 jobs. I just pulled these numbers. All these companies go through the same process. We want to make it transparent and complete. So I encourage you to swipe, make things process-driven. Make them transparent for your client. No surprises. Thank you.
Whoa. Whoa.
Thank you.
It's really good. Thank you. Next up, we are going to learn Scrum techniques for economic development from Michelle Claymore, the Economic Development Director for the City of Commerce City.
Hello, my name's Michelle Claymore. I'll get a head start here. And I'm the Economic Development Director for the City of Commerce City. Today I'm going to talk about a visual organizational management tool we use called Scrum. I will give a quick overview of what Scrum is, talk about using a task board, and define the role of a Scrum Master. So why Scrum? Have you ever felt so buried with work that you can't seem to get anything done? You have a hard time prioritizing your work and you have no idea what everyone around you is doing. You feel overwhelmed and disconnected from the rest of the team and you are stressed out. We often have too many and conflicting priorities. Like when a prospect calls and needs a site search done the same day that your budget numbers are due. Then you get an emailed question from a site selector that you quickly read, then forget about, and then because it gets buried under 20 more emails before the end of the day. Sound familiar? This constant chaos can lead to major burnout. How do we work smarter to meet our daily demands, especially when deadlines are getting shorter and shorter and constantly shifting priorities? I have asked myself this many times. Finally, at an IEDC conference, I was shown the answer. It's called Scrum. Scrum is a visual organizational management tool where teams work as a unit to reach common goals. It was developed in 1986, and it is a transparent framework to help react quickly to marketplace changes. In other words, it is an attempt to put chaos in a box and help deal with uncertainty. Why is it called Scrum? Scrum is not an acronym, but a reference used in rugby. Scrum refers to a move in which a team packs together to get the ball from one end of the field to another. This concept was later adapted to software development. At its foundation, it can be applied to anything. We have adapted it for economic development. Scrum is about process and daily communication. My next few slides will show you how to incorporate Scrum into your organizational management. I will share how to create a task board, what a Scrum Master does, and how to have a productive Scrum meeting. So to begin the process, you need to create a task board. This is a public to-do list that shows what items each team member is responsible for and is working on, and the tasks that have been completed. To make a task board, you will need a whiteboard, a 1/4-inch electrical tape, markers, index cards, and Post-its. Next, assign each team member a color. We have 4 team members in Commerce City, so there are 4 Post-it colors on our task board. The color identifies which team member is working on which task. This will help clarify roles and responsibilities within the team and visually identify individual roles. This is our task board in Commerce City. The task board has 6 columns. Our annual work plan programs are listed on the left, and then reading from left to right, we have the icebox column, the emergency column, in progress, waiting approval, and then completed. The icebox column is for future ideas or for projects that have been put on hold. You may not want to lose the idea, but it is not a priority for anyone at this time, so you put it on ice. The other columns are self-explanatory. Do be careful not to overload the emergency column. The next step in the Scrum process is to assign a Scrum Master. A Scrum Master is responsible for the Scrum process. He or she removes impediments and facilitates communication. The Scrum Master helps move along all the assigned colored Post-its on the task board towards the completed column. As part of the Scrum process, meet every day at the same time and the same place for 15 minutes to go over the task board. My team meets at 8:30 every morning in front of the task board in my office. I act as the Scrum Master and facilitate the meeting. I liked being called the Scrum Master. It's like the Yoda of task management. During these daily meetings, each team member shares 3 things: what they did yesterday, what they will do today, and what is impeding their progress to completing a task. The team then discusses the best approach to removing any impediments. This process gives everyone a vested interest in completing tasks on the task board. Since we meet so often, we really try to stick to a 15-minute rule. To help accomplish this, we make it a stand-up meeting. The idea is to move through everyone's questions within this time frame. We may get too comfortable if we were sitting down and prolong the meeting. Again, everyone has to be committed to the daily Scrum meeting. When we are, these daily meetings become more efficient for us than the dreaded 2-hour weekly staff meetings that we used to have. These daily check-ins help better organize the team and open up clear lines of communication between all the team members. The Scrum meetings also help us maximize the team's ability to deliver services quickly and better respond to emerging requirements. The whole Scrum process strengthens our approach to teamwork, promotes cross-training, and gives every team member a clear understanding of what we are trying to accomplish and what their role is. So next time you're wondering how you're going to survive the volume of work, the constant onslaught of changing priorities, and bad takeout while you work through lunch yet again, please remember this visual organizational tool called Scrum. Since I started using the Scrum process 6 months ago with my team, I have come closer to finding economic development nirvana in my own constant sea of chaos. Hopefully using Scrum can help bring a little calm to your chaos as well. If you have any questions, I'm very happy to share. Thank you.
Really good. I like the idea of the Yoda economic developer. That's a pretty good idea. All right. So next we are going to have Dr. R. Paul Williamson, the CEO of Sustainable Systems. And you are talking about the future of transportation in Colorado.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So I'm with Sustainable Systems of Colorado, which is a nonprofit organization, and today I wanted to address specifically what transportation is doing to strangle economic development here in Colorado. You are at the place where transportation governs everything we do in economic development and almost everything else that we do. Before I get to that, I wanted to talk about the steps how we got to this place. I have a 4-point progress that I'm doing. The first one is put together a plan. The United States is the only country in the world, I think, that doesn't have a plan for a sustainable energy future. So I said, well, why don't we get one? So I went ahead and wrote one. So that was the first step. So we got a plan on how to do it. The second step is having a sustainable smart home living learning center, which I just opened over in Superior, Colorado. And it's open for open houses on the first and third Saturday of every month. And we're also working on a sustainable village in Longmont. The third thing is our sustainable transportation system, SkyTram, which I'll get more into. And finally, the last project that I'm going to be working on is having a sustainable energy solar satellite system where we can beam energy from the outer atmosphere down to Earth. We can generate enough electricity from a solar satellite in 1 hour to power the whole United States for a year. So, public-private partnership is the only direction that is open now to transportation. There is no federal funds available. There are not state funds available. And I don't have to read everything that's on the screen there. If you drive a car, if you're involved in any kind of transportation, you've witnessed some of these things and how it affects you personally, your family, your business, economic development for your communities. The plan is to create the Christopher Perkins Memorial Advanced Transportation Research and Development Center in collaboration with a company called Skytran. I've been working with Skytran since 2002 when I was in charge of research and development at the University of Montana in Missoula, and we developed this hydrogen-powered monorail system that works on magnetic levitation, and we need to move this forward in our new research and development center, which will be a certification test for the Guideway system. The Skytran system itself is a point-to-point high-speed transportation system that will go up to 150 miles per hour. They are individual pods where you get on the pod and you say that I want to go to 5th and Broadway. It takes you directly to 5th and Broadway. You don't stop and pick up anybody else. Or if you're at the airport and going to Vail, you say I want to go to Vail, Colorado, and in 45 minutes you would be in Vail, Colorado. Of course, it would take away the opportunity to be on the road with everybody else, and I'm sorry for that, but you would fly above them in an overhead guideway system. It is powered by alternative energy, specifically hydrogen, and I'll show you how hydrogen works after the session is over here if you're interested. It's low impact utility right-of-way, much like a telephone line. It is future infrastructure backbone for power, for broadband, many other things. Low cost per mile, $15 million per mile, compared to light rail, which is around $200 million per mile. And it is private financed business model instead of tax financed. Here, if you can click on the video. This is a video that was put together for us by Universal Studios. When we had the project going, we had labs in Missoula, Seattle, Los Angeles, and at the NASA Ames Research Center in California. And Universal Studios was very interested in this. As you can see, you get in your pod, you go on this two-way guideway system. This is a T-bar that holds up the magnetic levitation part of the vehicle, and it goes to the next station. And then when it's at the next station, it queues up and lets somebody else take it. We'll keep going here. So progress so far. The U.S. Senate gave us approval through the U.S. Department of Transportation for funding, and it is proof of concept is done at the NASA Ames Research Center in California. Its international development is taking place now in Tel Aviv with the Israeli Aerospace Organization. It uses utility right-of-way. CDOT has indicated that they would give us the utility right-of-way for our demonstration between Boulder and Firestone. The national support is coming from the U.S. Federal Transportation Administration, who will be doing the certification for it. We are looking to put the test track in some locale. Firestone has volunteered to do that. It may be there or may be someplace else. The demonstration I've already mentioned between Boulder and Firestone, and the R&D Center is where we're headed to do our initiation of the project. So the steps that we are looking at now, we're looking to site the R&D center someplace. We need construction of the test track so we can get the supply chain identified and the guideways and skyports put together. The FTA will come and do the certification so that we can haul people in it. Identification of demonstration route, whether it's going to be the Boulder to Firestone or someplace else. And then securing of public-private investors installing demonstration route, estimated that we can put this up in 1 mile per day instead of the, 2042 or whatever it was. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and come ride with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I like the idea of commuting from Grand Junction to Denver in a pod, so thank you for that. Next up, we have John Cody, the Economic Development Director for the City of Thornton, talking about debunking conventional wisdom when it comes to economic development.
Greetings from the humongous, the Lord humongous, warrior of the wasteland, the Ayatollah of rock and roller. Okay, so that's who I am. I'm going to talk to you today. They said this needs to be a provocative presentation. And I started out with, I like dogs better than cats. Take it or leave it. That was a little too short. So what I want to talk about today real quickly is something that's relatively obvious but that you never see. For some of you, that's the stop sign at the end of your street. But for the rest of us, it's important that we understand, where does job growth come from? So, who can tell me what conventional wisdom says about where job growth comes from? Anybody? Not everybody at once. 80%, you go to an IEDC conference or anywhere else, they will tell you 80% of job growth comes from existing industry. Is that true or not? Hello? Is this working? Hello? Is it true or not?
True. Not true.
It's kind of an in-between answer. Here's why. It's not really. It's a trick answer. Okay, so look, if you look at this slide for just a minute, what you'll see is, this is information from Longmont when I worked there, because in order to know what kind of real impact you're having, or in this case where job growth comes from, you have to be able to track it on a net basis. And to be honest, most economic development organizations do not track on a net basis. They track on a gross basis, how many wins they get. But we tracked it both ways, how many we won and how many we lost. So if you look at that first column that's highlighted there, it says expansion jobs. That means how many jobs existing industry is creating. And then new jobs. Now you can see from this that on a top line basis, which means like not net, but on a gross basis, in fact, 80%, or close, in this case 79%, of your job growth comes from your existing industry, and 20% comes from new. But here's what's important, and this is why it usually is not true. Because you also have losses on the existing industry side, and you don't have any losses on the new industry side. But what that means is that on a net basis, most of the time, existing industry loses jobs. Or at least in this case, which is a specific case that involves Longmont primary employment over the period from 2001 to 2011. So, next slide. So then what I did was I took a look at in how many years, or in which years, did existing industry actually add to, on a net basis, primary job growth. And as you can see from this slide, the first, whatever that is, row, in only 2 years, over that 11-year period, did existing industry actually add to net job growth. And in the other 9 years, it did not. And so what that means is, if you look at it, existing industry lost on an average basis, an average annual basis, 700 jobs. So without new industry, you'd be in pretty tough shape. Now this is why this is all important. The economy's been better for a while. It hasn't been so much better that people have started getting stupid yet. However, I see that danger on the horizon. So what this means is you have to have both. You have to have existing industry growing jobs, or your top line doesn't go up. But you also have to have new job creation, or there's a good chance you don't have any job growth at all. So the next time you're having a conversation with an economic development organization, and they're deciding that they want to do retention instead of attraction, or vice versa, they just want to do attraction instead of retention, you have to tell them that that's wrong, because you have to do both. And if you don't do both, then you run the risk of seeing your community decline from an economic standpoint. That's all I got, guys.
Next up, we have Ken Jensen, the Senior Manager in New Program Development at OEDIT, who's going to be talking about Jumpstart.
Hey. All right, I am Ken Jensen. I work at the Department of Economic Development at the state of Colorado. You might know Fiona, our executive director. I think some of you know Jeff Kraft, who is my boss, and I know he knows a lot of you. That is not our official logo, by the way, sadly. I wish it was, but state government programs don't have logos quite that fun. Okay. How many of you have heard of the Rural Jumpstart program? Has anybody? Some? I come out here and it's amazing how many people have heard of this program, considering it's not even rolling out until December. That's very heartening. It's very good to hear. For those of you who haven't heard about it, the Rural Jumpstart program is a program that offers relief to new businesses in the form of exemption from state income taxes, sales tax, and the county and municipal business personal property tax. It also offers a chance for employees of these certain companies to work tax-free. In other words, they will get a complete rebate on their state income taxes at the end of the year. Now this is interesting. This last one is a new one. I've talked to the DOR, and as far as they know, Colorado has never offered exemption to employees for state income taxes. So we're kind of interested in seeing how that rolls out. How many people have heard of Startup New York, the program that is in New York State? That is something, this program is very much inspired by the Startup New York program as well. And Startup New York is offering state income tax exemption as well. So, moving on, this is a geographical program. It's based around counties, it's based around rural counties. At this point, we expect to have roughly 40 counties who are eligible to apply. Now, in 2016, the program is a little bit restricted. We're only allowed to approve 3 counties. After that, in 2017 and beyond, it's an open and unlimited program. But they limited the rollout in the statute. So we're going to be looking for just 3 counties at the get-go, and we'll come back to that in a later slide. Okay. In order to participate, the counties need to be rural and they need to be designated as economically distressed. And OEDIT, where I work, is working with the Economic Development Commission because the EDC is the ones who are ultimately going to determine which counties are economically distressed and which ones are not. Okay. Okay. If you're a business, it's a pretty straightforward thing. You need to locate into the zone. You need to be considered a new business. So this program is not open to existing businesses. It's for startups, it's for companies moving in from outside the state, it's for new divisions of companies, it's for joint ventures of companies, things like that. Okay. The companies need to be kind of high tech, they need to work with a university, they need to be exporting their goods outside the county, and most importantly, they must be not competing with an existing business in the state of Colorado. Okay. You might have even heard of this clause because it gets a lot of discussion. And in fact, we have a consultant who are working with on this very clause. They're an antitrust expert from Washington, D.C. and CU Boulder who is helping us with this. Most of the time when you show people this, they just kind of laugh and they just assume that no one's ever going to qualify. That's not the case. It is possible that the business would not be directly competing with existing Colorado companies. So don't let that clause discourage you from applying for our program and then getting businesses interested in the program. We do have ways to assess who is and who is not directly competing. Okay? Okay. Employees, pretty straightforward thing. They need to be W-2, not contractors, working for the new business. They do need to be making more than the county median wage. So there's a clause there. And there's only 300 employees per zone, which is another reason that we're trying to get a lot of interest in the program right off the bat, because we know that we're going to run into those limits in some of the zones. What do we got here? 2016, a little different application process. Because we are limited to 3 zones, we're looking for applicants who are very interested in the program. We're looking for people who can get this program launched right off the bat. We're looking for people who have a strong pipeline of companies, economic developers who have been talking to companies who are looking for a certain incentive to come move into the county. After that, 2017, we expect that the application requirements will loosen up a little bit. Okay. Finally, this is the 5-minute introduction to the program. We will be holding a couple of webinars. There will be a conference call. We'll have be using GoToMeeting, etc. We'll have 1 hour there, and we're going to get a little more into the details of the program. We're really looking to get some interest in this program. Sometimes in programs like this, it's not so much that people choose against it as that they're just not aware of it. We don't have a huge advertising budget. We actually have no advertising budget. So this is the kind of thing we're doing. We're going out to anyone who's interested, and we're telling them about the program. We're putting on webinars. We love talking about the program. We love when people are interested in it, and we're willing to work with people as much as possible. We do a lot of hand-holding in our office, and we are very available. If you have any questions or anything, please come see me, get hold of me. You can get hold of me right there through those, and I have some cards over there. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. We have one more. Dan Powers, the Executive Director of CoLabs, going to talk about Colorado Labs and the economic impact.
Did you know there are 30 different federal research laboratories in Colorado? There's some big ones everybody knows, but there are numerous other smaller ones throughout the state that cover wide fields of study. An example is that the United States Department of Agriculture in Fort Collins has the Center for Genetics Resources Preservation. They're an example of the visionary aspects of the labs where the state or the USDA is holding over 600,000 seeds there. They refer to that informally as the Doomsday Vault. That is where we keep all of the seeds for every known type of crop for the type of outcomes or eventualities on the earth that someone needs to be thinking about. That type of visionary theme and a few others are what I want you to try to connect to your organization and connect how the labs are actually sources, both tangibly as well as inspirationally. Another theme that the federal labs deal with is foundational research. At the National Institute of Science and Technology, the atomic clock there is something that deals with, and researchers have found very small modulations in Einstein's theory of relativity, such that they now have a clock that can, if I do bump ahead to this one, be so insanely precise it won't go off time for 15 billion years. Industry needs this kind of baselining for the technology that they're implementing, whether it's in time or spatial technologies and numerous other areas. Another theme that labs need to, that you can distill from labs is their discoveries for commercialization. At the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, there are projects that the scientists, when they're able to put them out to the entrepreneurial community, right now there's an example of an entrepreneur taking nanotechnology that allows for instant darkening and tinting of windows. He can use those in buildings, even in cars. And the scientists who work on that now can license that technology to this entrepreneur. At the National Center for Atmospheric Research, they're dealing with risk mitigation, something that all businesses are dealing that would be concerned with. There is wildfire analysis and modeling that's going on relative to drought and climate change, and that kind of risk analysis is something that businesses can both tap into for their own needs within their industry and also draw inspiration from. Lastly, at the Laboratory for Atmospheric Space Physics, students help design and are actually helping to run and steer satellites up in space. Getting students involved in the research at federal laboratories is part of the workforce development for the future of the economy that you've heard other speakers mention earlier today. We also have several Nobel Peace Prize winners in physics and in other areas, and that might be not as understood, but the brilliance that's coming out of these labs is something that businesses and economic development groups can actually tap into. Let me jump ahead here to the list. I know I told you I wasn't going to have you read, but if you can glance at this quickly or would like to know more, some of those labs might jump out as obvious that you've known about them, but there's others that are doing work in ways that could be relevant to individual companies, individual projects you're working on, or to the economic development organizations that you work for. Now let me jump ahead here to the big impact that you should know. Federal labs contribute over $2 billion to Colorado's economy. They're responsible for about 8,000 direct jobs and over 16,000 jobs in total, given all of the different nature of contractors, facilitators, short-time jobs, internships, et cetera, in the state. There's also intangible benefits of these labs, though. This is something for you to consider beyond just the financial impact. The expertise and the cooperative agreements and the manner in which federal labs are resources to private industry cannot be overstated, and it's often overlooked. Even I'm centered out of Boulder, but in Fort Collins and Colorado Springs, in the different places, Golden, where the labs are, they're often not recognized as being the resource that they are. But beyond the direct workforce development, resources, and other types of more, say, common wisdom, conventional impacts to businesses, there's more societal level impacts of the federal labs. There's the employees who are involved in volunteering, bringing their knowledge into the schools, whether it's formally or just informally. There is the contributions that the different labs would make to various civic and charitable organizations. And the spirit of exploration and vision, when these scientists go to schools in particular and are describing, here's what we do, here's how we're helping make the world better, the sparks that get sent off within any given students is something that's going to make both Colorado and the world better. I think somewhat to John, to Humongous's point, where did he go? That's one of the sources of getting people involved in starting new businesses. So something about collabs. Oh, I'll leave it on here for a second. Brief history, collabs is a group that's formed in 2007. Psst. We're done? And you've got to find out more about us. We're giving away awards based on the governor's recognition of high impact research. And this is our contact info. I apologize for not having all those photos I mentioned. Ask me more.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think that's pretty fun. We have some practice for our next go around. So thanks everybody for participating in the swipe. I hope you're going to swipe an idea, and I hope that was a good and fun use of an hour.